Everyone believes Cleveland is the home to rock and roll. I beg to differ. If we accept that AM radio was the medium that brought rock and roll to millions of teenagers around the world, then we'd have to go back to San Jose in 1909, when Doc Harold, a San Jose state instructor, first built a broadcasting radio station.
This is the wireless telephone on the Garden City Bank Building in San Jose, California.
Or perhaps it was his wife, 4 years later, who became the world's first disc jockey when trying to fill the time between her husband's broadcasts. Notice the antenna atop the baby carriage and the megaphone so that baby Harold could listen to her dad's broadcasts. But you know that the Bay Area is home to so many firsts, and in particular, Silicon Valley. Lee DeForest in 1927 put sound onto film. In 1937, David Packard and Bill Hewlett invented the sound oscillator. And the year after the birth of rock and roll, the term was coined, Les Paul, famous guitarist, and Ampex developed 8-track recording. And Ampex employee and Stanford grad Ray Dolby started working on his sound performance technologies. But if we move forward a little bit, we could talk about Los Gatos in the early 70s. Some of you know Mary Curtis. Her late husband, Doug Curtis, invented signal processors, which were key in the development of audio synthesizers of the 70s. And to this day, his products are sought out worldwide. Or Los Gatos resident Bob Gallion, who in the 70s developed one of the world's most powerful bass amps of Gallion-Kruger. In fact, the first amp he built, which was for sale on consignment at Draper's, was bought by Carlos Santana. And of course, this is my favorite. You know, the first live broadcast of a rock concert was in 1993 by some Palo Alto geeking rockers called Severe Tire Damage. But, you know, you really can't tell the story about rock and roll and the effects on all of us and music technologies without talking about these two guys. No one company has so transformed how we absorb and interact with music. iPhone, iPod, iTunes, GarageBand software, personal computers, than Apple computer. All right, so we have a lot of firsts in Silicon Valley, but that are all technology. We hear about them all the time, but there's a lot of other areas in which we come first. Let's take San Jose, for example. In 1957, San Jose was home to the first rock and roll riot in the Western United States. It was a Fats Domino concert at the Palomar Ballroom in downtown San Jose next to Hotel De Anza. I love that. Or it was San Jose native Paul Catalana who launched the Beatles' North American tour in 1964 at the Cow Palace in Daly City and did it again in 1965. This is Paul a year later with the Rolling Stones, who he produced, there's a very young Rolling Stones, at the San Jose Civic Auditorium. But on this night, something very special happened when a bus coming down Highway 17 carrying the Mary Pranksters and Ken Kesey on their way to a second of these advertised acid tests was heading to downtown San Jose. They stopped by the Civic Auditorium where fans for Rolling Stones were lined up, and they handed out these flyers. Can you pass the acid test? This happened at 45 South 5th Street. Some of you know it now as San Jose City Hall. It was at that house, it was called Big Nig's house. It was a frat house where the Grateful Dead first performed as the Grateful Dead. And a moment that we all revere in rock and roll history. Now, San Jose is known to another first. In '68, we hosted at the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds the Northern California Folk Rock Festival. The Doors, Big Brother and the Holding Company, The Animals, Janis Joplin. This was considered by many to be the precursor of Woodstock. In fact, shortly after Woodstock, Jefferson Airplane's Grace Slick was on the Dick Cavett show and asked, was there anything like Woodstock before? And she said, San Jose. Now, a year later, Jimi Hendrix performed at the Northern California Folk Rock Festival just 3 months prior to his electrifying performance at Woodstock. Now, it wasn't until Fleetwood Mac recruited these two South Bay folks and San Jose State students, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, that Fleetwood Mac had its first gold-selling record. And of course, Jefferson Airplane, we had Paul Kantner, who was a San Jose State student, and Jorma Kaukonen with the Santa Clara University. I love this one. 1969, San Jose's Pioneer High School, Count 5 rocked the world with a top 6 hit called Psychotic Reaction. That song was just recognized right along Beatles tunes and Cream's tunes as influential fuzz tone rock music just 2 weeks ago by Guitar Player magazine. And then who can forget February 2nd, 1968, when the Outcasts of Society rocked the Benjamin Franklin talent show. That's me on guitar in the upper left. Sorry. Or the Doobie Brothers, Silicon Valley's own Doobie Brothers, who 30 million records sold, 4 million platinum album sets, and 5 other platinum album sets, rocking the world to this day. And of course, if you asked Carlos Santana where he learned his chops, he would tell you it was East San Jose, the same place Richie Valens honed his chops in Latin rock. Now, Mickey Dolenz had plans to move to Los Gatos in 1965 with his family, but he was trying out for a part and later that year secured a role in the Monkees. And this is our friend, Los Gatos resident Steve Wozniak, who still holds the record for the largest attendance at a rock festival in the United States. This was 1982, the US Festival in San Bernardino in Southern California, and this is the scene of the one that occurred the second year. 675,000 attendees. So where does that leave us? We live in a region that could trace nearly every technological advance in music technology right here in the Bay Area. We live in an area that has produced more charted rock and roll hits than any other region in the world. Yet, the very things that we did, that the schools that produced the kinds of activities that gave birth to rock and roll are gone. The deficits in budgets have wiped them out. The experiences that these students had with those joyous concerts, in the elementary school, the holiday concerts, the talent shows, this is where they're starting to develop that sense of worth, where they're starting to step out of the crowd, are gone by the time they get to middle school and high school. And by then, we've lost what musicians really need is that sense of not belonging to the crowd, which is what teens want to do, but to stand outside of the crowd. And in fact, it was just a few days ago that UCLA published a study that kids who play a musical instrument stand a 69% likely chance to go to college than those that don't. So what do? Well, perhaps we've got to turn to the fans. How many times have we heard a rocker say, man, it's because of the fans I'm really successful. You know what? I'm a fan. I was a musician, you saw. And I think that fans want to do something to play it forward for the teens of today and tomorrow. And that solution may be something that I've just started recently called Bay Area Rocks. You're going to hear more about this later. It's brand new, but we are going to take historic content from this Bay Area, from the technologists, from the musicians, and we're going to package it in such a way that we will generate the resource to put money back into programs and programs back into the lives of teenagers so that we can play it forward for them. Thank you.